Hey guys, it's Mysopause and more with me. I hope that everything is going well with you and that you are taking care of yourselves and the ones you love. I'm going to try and get a little creative in this video, so I hope you don't mind, and we'll be doing this in segments. I have a lot going on, so I don't have much time to sit down, but before I get into the video, which will be about some rules I have in the pet hobby, I want to address the elephant in the room, where right now, at this moment in time, and in a lot of our lives in the hobby, there's a lot going on, and I'm not going to address that in this video. The reason is I have been at points in my life where there's been so much going on, so many stressors and anxieties going on, that it was overwhelming. And when you have that constantly, not negatively, thrust upon you, it's kind of hard to get away from it. It's a reminder sometimes. And even, for example, if you had just gotten over an anxiety, just completed a task, or done something to kind of progress positively, sometimes having someone bringing whatever is going on in the moment up can kind of cause that regression. So I know sometimes in my life I had wished that when I had all this going on, someone had came up to me and just said, "Hey Steve-O, did you see the Red Wings last night?" Or, "Hey Steve-O, did you see the new Magic card that came out?" Or, "Hey Steve-O, I got this new fat tail gecko, come check it out." Now, to some people, and I understand this, it may sound as if I'm coming up to them and saying, "Hey person that I care about, I know you have all these things going on in your life, but let's talk about these things I want to talk about." And while that's not the case, I can understand that perspective. But I want to offer that to people, and I do that in real world events too. So I want to say I apologize in advance if that ever comes up. If you and I are talking, you have something going on, and I just make a comment where, "Oh yeah, that's I hope things get better. Did you see the Red Wing game last night? Did you something, the fight, the whatever, the UFC fight, the whatever game, the whatever event is going on." And if you in that moment, which understandably you may say, "Wow, Steve's insensitive, thoughtless, he's a jerk, he's whatever," I hope that after the fact, you can at least take a moment and say, Steve-O was just, again, trying to offer me the option to go somewhere else mentally. And in that, the person can always say, "Oh, I don't want to talk about that. Let's talk about this that's going on." And then I will engage them in that. It's not like I dismiss it. I just try to read the person, and sometimes I will fail. Sometimes I may try to do that when I should, or not do it when or do it when I shouldn't. So I will apologize, but that is what this is. So with all that out of the way, and nothing more to say, I want to talk about some rules that I have in as a bug thug, a nature nerd, a naturalist, whatever. So hey guys, I forgot to mention, there are some links down below. I normally don't do that, and I need to get in the habit of it, so check them out. But let's get back into the video. I am a disabled veteran, and I have 3 kids. Boiled down, that means when things get more expensive, I can't work more hours, I can't ask for a raise, I can't go and get a second job. I have to kind of deal with my financial circle that I can't get out of. But I try to be very logical and responsible with my money. So there are times I go to pet expos, stores, I see things online, and I'm like, "Oh, I just want to buy that." And that's not a good thing always. It's not always a bad thing. So I'm going to talk about how I navigate that and some of my rules in the trade. At the end of this, I'm also going to give what is my golden rule, but I'm going to save that for the end, and I hope you hang around for that. But regardless of anything, if you've made it this far, I hope that everything is going well with you, that you're taking care of yourselves and the ones you love, and that you stay around for the rest of the video. Cheers. So, what about you? Do you have any rules? Do you have any superstitions, any tips or tricks or hacks or things like that that help you navigate, whether it's finances or some other aspect of the pet trade? I know for breeders and collectors and morphs, there's other aspects that come into play. And oops, sorry, I'm loading up here. As I mentioned, I'm going to do some cleanup work because I'm going to combine 2 other rules. One that I learned in the Marine Corps which is when you leave someplace, you leave it cleaner than when you got there. And when I was at the Reptarium the other day, I picked up some nails and some screws, and there's a lot more garbage, and I decided I'm going to go pick up more. I actually used to keep a broom in here, but had to take it out for a trip. So I'm putting it back in here. The other rule is I always tell my daughters, you can't always do everything. You can't change the world, but you can do what you can for someone when you can do it, and that can change their world. And I don't always have money. I don't have gifts. I usually talk too much to be good with my words. So I'm just going to go and clean up and try to help and be positive. So I'm on my way to do that, and I don't know when the next part of this video will happen, but I'll see you there. So I want to talk about my first rule, which is do not come home with a pet that you did not intend to bring home before you leave. This is kind of about impulse control, but there's a lot more to it, and it will tie in with some of the stuff I'll talk about here shortly. But it's a very simple rule. If I go to any place and I find something, some deal, some amazing pet I would just love to bring home, if I did not leave with the intent of bringing it home, I will not purchase it. It, again, is just a way for me to kind of reduce impulse buying, but a way for me to also... There we go. Get you in focus, you handsome girl. Clean yourself up. But it's also a way for me to slow down. I often do not know what is a good or a bad price. Things like that. I should often ask questions about the individual animal. I should ask about the breeder. I should ask about the way it was raised, the substrate it's on, the diets. All of those things that if you tend to get excited about something you find, you'll overlook and not ask. And so that's the importance of that rule. The other thing is, and this is kind of a repeating thing with these rules, there's a lot of interconnection to them, but they're slightly different. But if you find that amazing thing, there's nothing that's stopping you from buying it tomorrow or the next expo or something like that. And if you don't get to bring that guy or gal home, maybe it just, yeah, exactly, it wasn't meant to be. You just scoot on out. And maybe they'll be back there tomorrow if you can go back, next week or next month or the next expo, whatever it is. You can talk to those people, maybe see if they can hold it. Oh, now you're coming back, yeah. I like this. I'm going to end this part here, but she's starting to understand that, generally speaking, aside from now because I'm a bonehead, when I open this up, I bring her out, we hang out for a couple minutes, and then, yep, she goes right there where her food spot is, because she knows what I do is I'll prepare the food. Well, she doesn't know that aspect. Don't tell her, guys. I prepare the food, get it all set, and then I'll pull her out. We'll hang out for a bit, hang out with the girls, whatever. And then I'll grab the dish, put it kind of in this spot, and then put her back in, and she goes to town. So, like I say, she's kind of getting excited now. But I'm going to hop out of here and hop into the next rule. The next rule has some crossover with the prior rule, but again, I feel it's distinct enough that I'm going to mention it separately. That rule is you do not bring home a pet that you do not have an enclosure or home ready for. This is, again, somewhat about impulse control, but also just, I think, about being responsible, and you may be able to bypass this in that you may have a more robust and full stock of supplies and aquariums, hardscapes, softscapes, all of that. I personally do not. So this rule may not apply to you. But with that, what I don't want to do, and what this rule tries to help me avoid, is bringing someone home and not having a light bulb, not having the proper substrate, thinking I had something that I don't. Maybe the wattage on a bulb is too low, or maybe the bulb has since burned out. Some pets are a lot more resilient, and this may not apply to them. But I just want to make sure that, for me personally, that first day transitioning home, it's as smooth of a transition as possible, not creating stress, not having to have them change substrates or being in and out of their cage. Again, what should be their first week home, relaxing and getting used to that. Instead, you're pulling them out, redoing things several times, and then switching the lights and causing stress. And again, I just try to make everything as optimal as I can, and these rules help me kind of stick to that. Help me reduce stressors to the animal, anxieties, chances for me to botch something, or having anything like that negatively affect them. And the thing I like about this is a very cut and dry, distinct rule. There's not much slack or leeway to it. I really want to buy that thing right now, right? Yes, I do. But do I have an enclosure right now set because of my first rule, which is I should not be going out to purchase a pet without having planned and expected to bring it home. Part of that should probably be this rule, setting up an enclosure. Again, they kind of go hand in hand, but they are separate. And if I answer that question with a no, that is the same answer to, should I bring this pet home? So again, I kind of look at it like a mathematical equation. If I planned on bringing a pet home, should I bring it home? The answer is yes. It's the same answer. Do I have an enclosure or home ready for that pet? If yes is the answer, again, yes is the answer as to whether I should bring it home. And if the answer to that question of having an enclosure or having left expecting it is no, well, there's my answer to whether I should bring that pet home today. This rule is probably the longest, most convoluted, and most echoey because I, for some reason, decided to do this in the hallway, and I'm going to persevere and stick through it. Do your research and do not bring home a pet, a friend, whatever term you want to use, if you have not done diligent research. There are some things I even overlook in the moment, and again, it's why I do these, to try and mitigate things like that. But there are things that you should ask yourself, like how much does it cost me to house this animal? How often do I need to feed it, and are those foods available? What kind of medical or health care may come with this pet, and can I afford it? What's going to happen to this pet if I have a thing? Now, I'll give some specific examples, but that about kind of sums up that rule. But here are some things to think of. Again, if you get a turtle and that turtle has a shell issue, do you have to take that to a vet? Is it over-the-counter care? And you should think about that. You know, for me, I often overlook things like dogs and cats. I think that people very often will buy a dog or a cat and never think about the fact that I have to pay for shots. This dog may get sick and I may have to take this cat to the vet. And those are generally not free. And if you can't afford that, then you should not get the pet. Diets come into play, or your locality can come into play with some of their diets. I have another nature nerd friend in the hobby, and they have a garter snake, as do I, but their location that they live is more distant to a big city. So, for example, I feed mine lots of minnows that I can buy, and I also go and get lots of slugs out in the wild and breed them for a little bit, which I really need to get into. But my point is, they don't have access to that, so their diet is a lot more narrow, which is unfortunate. And that's one of the realities of having certain pets. If they have, again, research what their diet is, research if you get it today is, and you have, let's say, I'm just going to throw it out there, a 10-gallon enclosure for the pet that you have. At what point will you need to reinvest in a larger enclosure? How much will that cost? And then how many times do you have to do it? So let's say, you know, right now you have your thing in a 10-gallon, but eventually it's going to need a 40-gallon breeder. Do you go from the 10 gallon to the 20 to a 40 gallon breeder? Do you just go straight from the 10 and get the 40 gallon breeder prepped? Again, and then the costs that come with that. These are all things to consider. And again, I think of it like that mathematical equation. If the answer to any of those is no, then the answer to should I bring this pet home with me is no. Now, I did mention, I hope, and I think I mentioned a fourth rule. And this is the interesting rule, I think, and it's the most thought-provoking of the rules because it's derived from hockey and the Marine Corps. I've heard it in those two instances. Rule number 4 is rules and bones are made to be broken. To me, words matter, and I'll tell you in this instance what I'm talking about. Exceptions are part of life, but if I always tell my daughters yes to everything, me telling them yes is not an exception. And let's say, Dad, can I stay up late and watch this movie? I really want to. And I want to have candy while doing it. Generally speaking, I will say no. But if I say no, an exception is the yes. So when you make rules, you can make exceptions. But if you don't make rules, you're never making exceptions. You are just always giving in, saying yes, and not setting boundaries, not setting those things that you need, the structures to stand on. So I violated my own rules when I bought Dumpy. Another rule I generally have is, this is kind of an impromptu, I guess would be a fifth rule. I try, obviously, I don't know if it's, I don't want to buy at big box stores so much as if I can ever give my money to you, a person, and that money helps you, I would rather give you that money for the lizard you bred than give my money to Petco for the corporation. Then there's the ethics of animals and all that. There's a lot of reasons why I would rather, again, deal with you, especially locally. I'm a big person about trying to do everything locally and then going to a person outside of my locality again versus going to a random corporation. I made an exception when I got Dumpy because the price was just unreal. If you know anything about northern blue-tongue skinks, you'll know their price. I brought Dumpy home for under $90. And I believe a big part of that, in my opinion, and so that was the rule I violated, which was I did not go and intend to bring her. Now, I had danced with it. I played out in my head if I had everything here and did it. But my point is I violated my own rule where when I went to Petco, I was just going to get leaves or something. But it worked out. And I believe the reason it worked out in my favor in that regard, personally, is because it's getting late in the season. Right now here in Michigan, it's snowing. And I do not believe they wanted to deal with the potential brumation and the fact that in the middle of brumation, if they had the thing for sale, they'd have to pull it out of brumation again, disturb it, stress it, send it home with me. And then at that point, well, am I going to put it back into brumation? Is it going to want to go back into brumation? Is my setup blah, blah, blah. So I think they were very much trying to get rid of her. I always say, I think it's a her, and I don't particularly care. I would never say I will only buy that pet if it's a he, or I will only buy that pet if it's a she. I don't generally care about that, unless it's some factor about aggressiveness, lifespans, or, breed, whatever. But so it all worked out in that regard. And again, I made an exception to that rule. And that's what I think rules are important for. Because again, you're not breaking rules if you don't have any rules. And then again, if you're not doing that, you have no structure. You're just kind of going about doing things wantonly and freely, which is not necessarily bad. But again, I think the time to be wanton and free is when you're running out in the field because it's snowing and having fun, not when you're bringing home animals that you could hurt or kill in the long run and harm. So those are a couple of my rules. I went from 3 to 4 to 5, but the fourth rule is my ultimate golden rule. Rules and bones are made to be broken. But again, set those rules for yourselves. And I asked earlier, but I'm just curious, do you have any rules, any superstitions, any trends, any things you just noticed that you do absentmindedly, anything you think I should do? I always kind of ask those things. So all of that out of the way, I hope that everything is going well with you. You're taking care of yourselves and the ones you love. I don't know how this is going to be because I feel like it's a mess when I'm trying to be as creative as I am. So let me know what you think of the video below, and then let me know how you're doing. So take care of yourselves, take care of the ones you love, and go easy.